So I want you to picture a warehouse, like a massive one, the size of an airplane hangar.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And inside, there's just an entire season's worth of luxury, high-end fashion. We're talking pristine jackets, unworn shoes, immaculate dresses, and it is all just being piled up and systematically set on fire.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a striking image.
And the crazy thing is, the brand doing this, they aren't destroying defective products. They are literally incinerating their own perfectly good inventory just to, maintain this aura of artificial scarcity.
Right, right. It's a stunning visual. I mean, think about the destruction of raw materials there, the energy wasted in manufacturing, the labor, all of it intentionally burned just to protect a logo, basically, and keep profit margins artificially inflated.
Exactly. It's wild. But now I want you to hold that image of the corporate bonfire in your mind, and let's travel to a completely different setting, just a modest, everyday domestic kitchen.
Okay, quite the pivot.
Yeah. So in this kitchen, we see an older woman sitting at a sewing machine, carefully turning a faded, threadbare t-shirt into a floor mop.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. Two entirely different approaches to the life cycle of textiles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And reconciling those two images, the bonfire and the sewing machine, that is the core mission of our deep dive today.
We're looking at exactly how global industrial waste and daily domestic habits just, well, collide.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 4, Deep Dive 2 of Threads of Tomorrow-Crafting Textiles. This deep dive is brought to you by omemydot.com. And for those taking notes, that is spelled omemy.com.
So glad to be back. And in our previous deep dive, we tackled the tension between consumerism and sustainability.
Right.
We basically established that the two can actually coexist, but, and it's a big but, we have to operate from a mindset of conscious consumption rather than conspicuous consumption.
Right, buying with intention, not just buying to signal status or keep up with trends. So today, we are taking that foundation and applying it directly to our own homes.
Bringing it right into the living room.
Exactly. We are looking at textile upcycling, repurposing, and how our own personal responsibility is intrinsically tied to massive global sustainability targets.
It's a huge topic.
It is. And the source material for today, which comes from omemy.com, opens with a story that I think perfectly captures this tension. It focuses on a young woman named Neeta and her grandmother.
Right. The story with Neeta's grandmother. I love this one. Neeta is basically observing her grandmother's household fabric protocols. And in this house, textiles do not simply die, they evolve.
Yes, they have 9 lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A discarded sari is methodically converted into a cushion cover. Old living room curtains find a second life as like the inner hidden lining of a winter quilt.
And the standard t-shirt goes through an entire reincarnation cycle, right? It starts as apparel, obviously.
Yeah.
Then it eventually downgrades to a kitchen towel. Then it gets repurposed as a duster.
Yeah.
And only at the very end of its structural integrity does it become a floor mop.
Which is brilliant, honestly. But Neeta isn't charmed by this at all, is she?
Not at all. She is incredibly frustrated. She watches her grandmother spend hours hunched over a sewing machine, and Neeta just views this as a massive, unnecessary burden.
Yeah, she sees it as this stubborn refusal to adapt to modern convenience.
Right. And, I want to look at this from Neeta's perspective for a second, because I think it represents the default modern economic mindset. Let's be real. If we look at this strictly through the lens of microeconomics, grandma's time-to-value ratio seems terrible.
Oh, absolutely. On paper, it looks wildly inefficient.
Right. We live in an era of hyper-optimized, mass-produced goods. You can buy a pack of brand-new, purpose-built microfiber cleaning cloths for next to nothing. So if we accept the premise that time is money, spending an entire afternoon manually converting a shirt into a rag feels like a terrible decision.
I get that logic. I really do. The market has supposedly solved this problem at scale, so why reject the convenience?
Exactly. Why is grandma doing this?
Well, it's because the concept of cheapness in the modern market is completely an illusion. It's based entirely on externalized costs. And Neeta's grandmother intuitively understood something that modern economics often tries to hide.
Which is what?
She actually asked Neeta to sit down and mathematically calculate the actual physical waste generated by binning perfectly usable fabrics. See, when we look at a price tag for a new pack of cleaning rags, we're only seeing the cost of assembly and shipping.
Right, just a shelf price.
Exactly. We are deliberately ignoring the ecological cost of resource extraction, the environmental cost of chemical dyeing, and the long-term cost of waste disposal.
Oh, wow. Which brings us right back to the luxury brand setting fire to their inventory.
Precisely. That corporate bonfire is the logical endpoint of an economy that completely separates the financial cost of an item from its ecological reality. They destroy resources to maintain an illusion of value.
So you juxtapose that with Grandma meticulously extending the life of a T-shirt. You start to realize her habits aren't just some quirky refusal to embrace modern convenience.
Not at all. She is practicing a highly sophisticated form of economic decentralization. She is subverting a wasteful system by flat out refusing to participate in it.
That is so powerful. Upcycling at the domestic level isn't merely a thrifty hobby. It is this unrecognized, deeply vital form of ancient wisdom that directly combats the global waste crisis.
And it scales up in ways that are honestly hard to visualize at first. The source material explicitly connects these localized domestic habits to the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Right, the 2030 Agenda, which we should probably explain for those who might not spend their weekends reading UN policy papers.
Fair enough. So the 2030 Agenda is a massive, comprehensive blueprint adopted by UN member states back in 2015. It's designed to create sustainable prosperity and operates on 17 interconnected goals.
Okay, 17 goals. But looking at them as a list on a whiteboard can feel pretty abstract. Right?
Very abstract.
So let's ground this. Let's trace the life cycle of a single garment, say a polyester cotton blend sweater, and see how deciding to upcycle it in your living room cascades through this giant global agenda.
Perfect example. Okay, so if that poly cotton sweater goes into the trash, it eventually ends up in a landfill, and because it contains synthetic fibers, it will not fully degrade.
Right, it just sits there.
Worse than sitting there. It slowly breaks down into microplastics that leach into the surrounding soil and groundwater. So, by keeping that garment out of the waste stream and turning it into, let's say, a tote bag, you directly intervene in public health.
You prevent that chemical leaching.
Exactly, which aligns perfectly with the agenda's goal 3, which is good health and well-being.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And because you made a tote bag out of what you already own, you didn't buy a new one.
Right.
That means a new canvas bag didn't need to be manufactured to meet your demand. You just prevented the massive water consumption and toxic runoff associated with growing new cotton and processing chemical dyes.
And there you go. That is exactly how local action drives Goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation.
It's like a giant planetary domino setup.
It really is. And then the economic shift happens. When we fulfill our material needs by upcycling or, by supporting local artisans who upcycle community donations, we divert capital away from massive, polluting multinational conglomerates.
We starve the beast, basically.
Right. We shift that economic energy into micro businesses and cottage industries. This localized economic resilience hits Goal 8, focusing on decent work and economic growth, and it also hits Goal 11, which aims to build sustainable cities and communities.
It is amazing how connected it all is. I tend to think of the global supply chain as this massive, incredibly heavy flywheel. It is spinning at terrifying speeds, and it's fueled by cheap, continuous consumption.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. And you can't stop a flywheel that heavy by just standing in front of it with a protest sign. It'll just run you over. But you can slow it down by cutting the fuel line. And the fuel line is our everyday impulse demand. By rewiring our psychology to view trash as raw material, we change our relationship with consumption entirely. We hit Goal 12, responsible consumption and production, not through some massive top-down policy shift, but by removing the everyday friction of our own purchasing habits.
It creates a closed-loop system in your own home. And once you start viewing your closet as a resource bank rather than, a disposal queue, the entire paradigm shifts.
Totally shifts. And hey, if you are listening to this right now and you find yourself rethinking your own relationship with the items in your home, there's a great way to take this even further.
Highly recommend looking into this.
Yeah, so omimai.com has built an entire WhatsApp community dedicated to exploring these exact concepts. It's called Devi the Curious.
Connecting with others who are navigating this same shift in mindset can be incredibly valuable. You don't have to do it in a vacuum.
Absolutely. You can join the group by just scanning the QR code on the poster for this deep dive. Devi the Curious is this curated space where you get updates on new deep dives, tools, live workshops, and specialized training. It is a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to translate the theory of sustainable living into actual daily practice. So definitely scan the QR code and dive in.
Returning to that daily practice, though, I think we need to talk about the physical mechanics of upcycling.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, what fabrics should we actually prioritize? Because they aren't all created equal.
No, they certainly aren't. The source outlines specific fabric usage protocols, and it specifically highlights denim as a critical priority.
Denim is fascinating to analyze because its durability is completely mismatched with how we discard it. I mean, we treat it like fast fashion, but structurally it's built like industrial canvas.
Exactly. And the manufacturing process for denim requires staggering volumes of water. It generates immense chemical waste. It is, frankly, one of the most resource-heavy textiles to produce.
So throwing away a pair of jeans just because of a frayed hem or a hole in the knee.
It discards all that embedded energy, while the vast majority of the fabric remains practically indestructible. Denim should never be landfilled. They should be repurposed into heavy-duty utility items. Think tool rolls, cloth trays, pet blankets. Keep that material active for years, if not decades.
Because the structural integrity is already there. Which I guess brings us to the synthetics. Polyester, nylon, acrylics.
Right, the complicated ones.
Yeah. These materials are essentially just spun plastics. We know they don't degrade in landfills, but the modern fashion industry has recently been pushing a very, very aggressive marketing narrative around them.
Oh, the ocean plastics campaigns.
Yes. We constantly see campaigns advertising high-end athletic wear made from recycled ocean plastics. And it is presented as the ultimate technological solution to our waste problem. Isn't that a good thing?
It is a textbook example of corporate greenwashing. The narrative suggests that industrial recycling is this clean, magical loop. Plastic bottle goes in, fresh t-shirt comes out. But the source explicitly warns against this illusion.
Really? So let's break down the mechanics of why that loop is broken. Because we aren't talking about simply melting an aluminum can and pouring it into a new mold, are we?
Not even close. Converting rigid, picky, plastic-like water bottles or ocean debris into a soft, wearable fiber is a brutal industrial process. The plastic must be collected, sorted, heavily cleaned, shredded, melted down at extreme temperatures, and then chemically extruded into microscopic threads.
That sounds intense.
It is. This requires massive amounts of electrical power, thousands of gallons of water for cooling and washing, and intense chemical solvents.
Oh, wow. And the environmental toll doesn't even stop once the shirt is made right.
Nope.
Yeah.
When you wash that recycled plastic athletic shirt in your washing machine at home, the friction of the wash cycle causes the fabric to shed microscopic plastic fibers directly into the wastewater system.
So it ends up right back in the water.
Exactly. Furthermore, modern apparel is rarely a single material anyway. The industry relies heavily on polycotton blends. They weave natural cotton fibers and synthetic plastic fibers together at a microscopic level to make garments cheaper and, more wrinkle-resistant.
Right. Nobody likes ironing. But that blending makes true mechanical recycling virtually impossible at the end of the garment's life, doesn't it?
It makes it a nightmare. You cannot easily separate the plastic thread from the cotton thread without soaking the entire garment in highly toxic chemical solvent baths.
It creates what did the source call it, a monstrous hybrid material.
Yes, a monstrous hybrid. The whole plastic-to-clothing pipeline solves a visible waste problem by creating a massive invisible energy and chemical waste problem. It requires intense industrial intervention just to generate marginal value.
Okay, so let's contrast that high-energy, low-yield industrial process with genuine, sustainable history. Because the source points to the origins of Kantha embroidery in the Bengal region as kind of the original benchmark for zero-waste, minimum-process upcycling.
Kantha is incredible. It is a masterclass in material science performed without a single machine.
How does it work?
So the process takes old, worn-out sarees and dhotis. These are cotton fabrics that have degraded over time and lost their structural integrity. They are super thin and fragile.
Basically rags at that point.
Right. But instead of chemically breaking them down, local artisans simply layer the fragile textiles on top of one another.
Oh, I see. And then they use the running stitch-like, intricate, dense patterns of hand stitching to bind all those layers together.
Exactly. That stitching creates a composite material. It adds tensile strength back into the weakened fibers, completely transforming discarded rags into beautiful, highly durable quilts and blankets.
And the energy input is literally zero.
Zero. There are no industrial heating elements, no chemical solvents, no water contamination. The only input is human labor and human creativity.
That is profound. It creates immense lasting value out of depleted materials simply by rethinking their structure.
The Asian subcontinent has utilized these local crafts for centuries. It relies on utilizing what is locally available and extending its life through skill rather than energy-intensive processing. And modern institutions are slowly, finally beginning to recognize the power of this ancient wisdom.
Right, the source actually argues for a fundamental institutional shift in how we teach textiles.
Yeah.
Instead of training students in garment manufacturing using virgin fabrics sourced from global supply chains, sewing and craft institutes need to pivot their entire curriculum toward repurposing.
Yes. They should operate by collecting community donations of used textiles and challenging learners to design entirely new apparel and utility products from local, pre-loved materials.
That makes a lot of sense. That localized sourcing ensures the carbon footprint of the education itself remains as close to zero as possible.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand the logic. The mechanics of cantha are brilliant, the water weight of denim is undeniable, and avoiding the chemical extraction of polyblends makes total sense. But I have to push back here, and I want to push back hard on this idea of domestic responsibility.
Go ahead. I'm ready.
If we place all the onus on the individual if we tell Neeta and her grandmother, and you the listener, and ourselves, that we need to spend our weekends auditing our closets and stitching old shirts into tote bags, doesn't that just provide cover for multinational conglomerates?
I see what you mean.
I mean, while we are agonizing over a single pair of jeans in our living room, the toxic industries that created this mess are still out there churning out millions of metric tons of fast fashion. Does withholding our individual demand actually work fast enough to stop the ecological damage? Or is upcycling just, a way to feel good while the ship sinks?
That is arguably the most critical friction point in modern sustainability. Are we just sweeping the deck while the conglomerates dump more garbage?
Exactly.
The source material addresses this directly, actually, and it relies on the actual vulnerability of modern supply chains.
Vulnerability. How so? Because the conglomerates seem completely untouchable.
They appear untouchable, but they operate on incredibly fragile, razor-thin margins of overproduction.
Wait, really?
Yes. Fast fashion and modern manufacturing rely on constant, uninterrupted inventory turnover. They must sell massive volume to survive. They do not manufacture products out of malice. They manufacture them because we predictably, reliably purchase them. The basic rule of economics remains absolute here. The manufacturer will not produce what the customer does not buy.
So you're saying the sheer scale of the conglomerate is actually a vulnerability if the demand fluctuates even slightly.
Precisely. If a localized demographic stops buying cheap microfiber rags because they are utilizing their own upcycled textiles, the conglomerate's algorithm registers a backlog of inventory. The supply chain chokes.
Wow.
Upcycling is not just about managing the waste that already exists. It is an aggressive strategy to starve the demand that funds future manufacturing.
We really do have to cut the fuel line to the heavy flywheel.
And that requires a personal audit before every transaction. Before you open a browser window to buy a new utility item, you audit your own house. You search the back of your closet for unused textiles that can be repurposed to fulfill that exact functional need.
You essentially become your own supply chain. You replace mindless consumption with mindful creation.
Perfectly said.
And when millions of individuals make that subtle shift in behavior, those massive toxic industries have no choice but to slow their production, pivot their models, or face catastrophic inventory failure. The leverage doesn't sit in corporate boardrooms. It literally sits in our daily domestic choices.
It is a radical reclamation of economic power.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started by looking at the deep frustration of Neeta, watching her grandmother seemingly waste time at a sewing machine.
And we reframe that grandmother's habits away from mere inefficiency, revealing a profound zero-waste practice that stands in direct opposition to the absurdity of luxury brands burning their own inventory.
We mapped that local domestic action directly onto the UN's 2030 agenda. We traced how keeping a synthetic shirt out of a landfill and avoiding the purchase of a newly dyed garment literally drives global goals for clean water, decent work, and sustainable community infrastructure.
Then we examined the mechanical failures of corporate greenwashing. We detailed how melting and extruding ocean plastics relies on massive industrial energy and toxic chemicals, all while shedding microplastics anyway.
And we contrasted that with the brilliant materials science of cantha embroidery, proving that human skill can add structural integrity to degraded fibers without a single watt of industrial energy. But most importantly, we addressed the elephant in the room regarding corporate responsibility.
We established that the onus is genuinely on us, because our localized demand is the only fuel keeping the massive engine of fast fashion running. Textile upcycling isn't just a craft project, it is the fundamental first step toward true sustainable living.
It forces us to stop being passive endpoints for global supply chains and start being active participants in local ecological repair. This has been a deeply analytical journey, and there's so much more to explore in the original material. I highly recommend you read this entire story and explore the nuances at your own pace by visiting omy-my.com. Again, that is spelled OMEOY.com. The platform is filled with comprehensive details on everything we have broken down today.
And taking this knowledge into the real world requires a community.
Exactly. Before we sign off, this is your second reminder to scan the QR code on the poster of this deep dive. That code will instantly drop you into the Davey the Curious's WhatsApp community. It is a perfect place to stay informed about new deep dives, fascinating blogs, practical tools, and live workshops curated specifically for our listeners.
And while you are engaging with the material, please drop a note in the comment box. Let us know your thoughts on today's analysis and tell us what complex topics you want to hear us deconstruct in future deep dives.
The direction of our research is always guided by your curiosity. That brings us to the end of our mission for today. Thank you for joining us for Season 4, Deep Dive 2 of Threads of Tomorrow. We will be back with more thought-provoking content, so follow the show and stay tuned.
Before we part ways, I want to leave you with one final thought to examine on your own. We invest billions of dollars in endless academic research seeking high-tech, futuristic solutions to environmental collapse. We want carbon scrubbers, genetically engineered bacteria to eat plastic, and lab-grown alternatives. But consider this. What if the most powerful disruptive technology we possess to heal the planet isn't a new industrial invention at all? What if the ultimate technology is simply the forgotten, quiet art of repairing what is already in our hands?